So Wizards just recently announced that with the upcoming set of Kaladesh, they'll be doing away with the intro pack. So cue whatever form of celebration music you will with that news, as I feel the intro packs were a terrible excuse for a beginner player product. I did not feel that they offered any sustenance for the price, and they didn't offer an effective tool for anyone to get into the game. In its stead, however, Wizards has announced a brand new product, Planeswalker decks, the new pre-constructed 60-card decks featuring a mythic rare Planeswalkers and several cards that support that Planeswalker. But seeing as the decks are aimed deliberately at beginning players, the R&D went ahead to make sure these Planeswalkers were something only beginning players will be able to get, that experienced players will not really find much of a use for, and as a result they're going to be, quote, expensive to cast and splashy. Now, as someone who has a strong distaste for underpowered and overly watered down cards meant to be played only in a beginning environment, I really don't like most intro pack cover cards because they're too expensive to cast and they endorse the slow, grindy games that intro packs are known for. Now, what I do like is the notion that you can buy one of these Planeswalker decks and the cards in them can help you build your very first Magic deck. The Planeswalker that you choose will be usable in whatever deck you choose to build, and it'll be fun to play. To that end, I've went ahead and designed 5 different Planeswalkers that I would feel would be very effective in these decks. They're obviously not real cards, they probably will not be even remotely close to what Wizards has designed, and they're heavily influenced on already existing Planeswalker abilities or card abilities in general. But I feel that they're balanced enough beginning players can use them, have fun with them, get really into the game, and they're not overpowered enough that experienced players will jump at. We're going to start with Sorin, the lone Markov. It's the black Planeswalker that I've designed. It costs 2 generic and then 2 black for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. You can +1 him to get a 1/1 black vampire creature token and play with lifelink. You lose 1 life. Its -1 ability is target player loses 3 life, target opponent. And the ultimate, -7, is you lose half your current life total, then swap life totals with target opponent. I feel this sort of emphasizes what black magic has sort of come to nowadays. A lot of vampires, especially with the recent set having a lot of black vampires, namely ones with lifelink. The -1 is very much a black ability. It's sort of reminiscent of the original Sorin Markov's ability of the target player losing life. The ultimate ability I feel is a very interesting sort of ability. We haven't really seen any cards really swapping life totals with an opponent in a long time. We've had similar abilities, but nothing quite this way. I feel that as a 3 loyalty Planeswalker, he doesn't come in super close to getting that ultimate ability, and even so, the ultimate really isn't overpowered. I feel that the +1 ability really isn't too overpowered. It's a 1/1 lifelink vampire. It's synergistic with some of the cards right now with the Innistrad block, but it's nothing that's going to be broken by any means. The -1 with losing 3 life is okay. It's nothing, again, overpowered, and you're only going to be able to use it a few number of times before Sorin either gets killed or you're going to want to start +1ing him. Next up is Nisse of the Reborn Hollow. This was very much inspired by the Zendikar rebirth following the death of Ulamog and Kozilek. Again, same cost, 2 generic and then 2 green for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. Nisse's +1 is you could put a 1/1 green elf druid creature token into play with tap it to put 1 green mana into your mana pool. Basically, it's the Llanowar Elves ability, and this was seen on Freyalise from the recent Commander 2014 green deck. It's the same ability. I feel it's a very flavorful green ability for a Planeswalker to have, since Nisse was an elf. Elves very much are the green creature, and I figured it was an interesting +1, especially if they can build the deck to focus on putting elves into play. The -2 is destroy target artifact or enchantment. Its controller may put a 1/1 green sapling creature token into play. Again, we're going off of Freyalise, albeit with the ability to put a 1/1 green sapling creature token, so your opponent might be losing an artifact or an enchantment, but instead they're going to be getting a 1/1 creature, so they're not really losing too much. And then it's the ultimate ability for Nisse, which again, it's a -6, so you're not going to be getting it right away. You're going to gain 2 life for each elf you control, and then for 2 life for each forest you control, so a decent amount of life you'll gain off of this, which is something really not found in green all that much, but Luminescent Rain was sort of the inspiration for this ability, and I feel like it's a very flavorful ability for elves, since in the older sets you've had cards that give you life for your elf. Now we're on to the red Planeswalker, Chandra Blazecaller. Another 4-drop Planeswalker, 2 generic and then 2 red for a 3 loyalty. You can +2 her to deal 3 damage to target opponent or creature. It's basically Lightning Bolt on a Planeswalker, which I really like. The idea of Lightning Bolt is perhaps one of the most iconic red cards, and I really don't like that you don't really see a lot of cards with that degree of ability anymore. I know that a lot of power creep comes into conversation, but quite frankly, Lightning Bolt is such a staple in so many formats, you might as well put it on a Planeswalker already. The 0, you can put a 1/1 red elemental creature token into play with haste. Not really anything game breaking, because quite frankly, if you're putting out a 4-drop card at this point, you're not going to need really a 1/1 red elemental. This isn't like it's a turn 1 Planeswalker, and it's not really affecting the game any much. So if you're going to want to put a 1/1 token into play to protect Chandra, you're not going to be contributing towards her ultimate ability, which is a -8 to deal 6 damage to each creature your opponent controls. But if they control no creatures, they themselves take 10 damage instead. And again, this is similar to one of the original Chandra's abilities where she does 60 damage to creatures. I figured with taking in the 10 damage instead, it makes it relevant even if your opponent has already lost all of their creatures. So it pretty much is a nice burning away kind of spell, and I feel like it's really insightful for a red deck to have something that burns your opponent one way or another. Next up, we have Jace the Mindbender, which was perhaps the most difficult card to find a name for because Jace has so many iterations by now, I really had nowhere to go for that. Once again, we have 2 generic and then 2 blue for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. You can +1 him to draw a card. Very straightforward, very basic, very blue ability. You can also +1 him to return a target creature to its owner's hand, whether it be yours, your opponent's, whatever. The ultimate ability, -7, target opponent puts the top 3 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard for each card in your hand. It's a little bit of an awkwardly worded ability. I'm still working on trying to simplify it. It's a very blue ability. It goes into like a mill ability sort of thing, and I feel like it's not overpowered enough that a player is going to be upset if they have this done on them. And it's also something that I feel like a beginning player who's getting into blue magic is going to really enjoy, because a lot of blue nowadays is going for some of that mill ability. So it'd be really interesting to see how an intro player finds this kind of ultimate. And finally, we have Gideon, the Hero of Angels. Now with Gideon, it's another 4-drop for 3 loyalty, 2 white and then 2 generic. You can +2 him until end of turn. He becomes a 3/3 white human soldier creature token with haste and indestructible, which is kind of a generic Gideon ability. There have been a lot of iterations of Gideon where he becomes a creature that's indestructible to some power. I figured with the original Gideon becoming a 6/6 avatar or whatever his was, this is very reminiscent of that, in that instead of it being a 6/6, which was what Gideon's original starting loyalty was, he starts out at 3, so he becomes a 3/3. I didn't make him an ally only because as it stands right now, the ally of Zendikar Gideon was just for the sake of Zendikar. You're not going to be probably seeing any more Gideons with ally as a subtype, so I figured it really wasn't necessary. Now his 0, you gain 4 life. I was debating making this a plus ability, but I really don't feel like it's necessary to gain any life off of a plus Planeswalker ability, especially given that his ultimate, which is -9, you put X 1/1 white angel creature tokens into play with lifelink and flying, where X is your life total. I feel like out of all of the Planeswalker designs, Gideon had the most powerful ultimate ability, but being that it's a -9, it's not going to be nearly as overpowered as, say, Stormherd. You're not going to be getting like a bajillion angel tokens. You're only going to be getting a few, since by the time you're going to be able to get him up to that 9 to remove, you're not going to have a whole lot of life, and at the same time you're not going to be able to keep zeroing him to gain the 4 life every turn. So it's a pretty balanced. So what do you think of these Planeswalkers? Do you agree with the design that I went with all of these? I decided to make them all the same cost and the same loyalty starting so that not one of them seems overpowered to someone who hasn't played the game yet and doesn't understand what these abilities or what these numbers mean. I figured if you had them all on the same level, you'd be able to be more widespread, so that a player who looks at Gideon and says, I want to play Gideon, they'll get him just off of they think he looks cool, or they'll go for Nisse because they see she looks like an elf and they want to play elves. And I figured it'll be a better way to get into Magic than seeing that, oh, you know, this Gideon it looks like he costs a ton of mana to play. I'm not going to get him because I don't want to play a card that expensive. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Again, like this video and remember to subscribe to the Planeswalker Project for more Magic the Gathering videos.